A very pleasant good day to all of our viewers, and welcome to another edition of Marriage Encounter. We are delighted, as always, to be with you on the airways of Second Advent Radio. And for those of you who are joining via our worldwide web or various social media platforms, we say a special welcome to you. We trust that today's broadcast will prove meaningful. With me, Dr. Greene, is Pastor Staton Adams, and we are going to guide you through today's discourse. Good day, Pastor Adams, and welcome.
Good day, Dr. Greene, on a pleasant today is what a pleasant Thursday morning. Thursday, it's the week is going to an end. We're glad that we can be on live this morning again, and we're happy that our consistent viewers, followers can be with us. But as we always ask, tell somebody else who doesn't know about Marriage Encounter to join us, join you, and we're ready to share another installment of this very important area that we're discussing right now.
Well, we want to invite you at this time to have a word of prayer with us, shall we? Almighty Father and our God, we thank you for the opportunity to share with our friends in Radio Lands. We ask that you will be with us as we go into today's broadcast and grant that the information will prove meaningful in helping to build and strengthen relationships, whatever state they're in. We ask for your wisdom and your guidance in this regard. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, folks, for the last few weeks, we have been discussing a very important subject. We have been looking at some principles that will seek to address your ability to work with challenges in your marriage relationship. And I want to, when we ended last week, Pastor Adams, I believe we were talking about the whole matter of growing and owning, and then we switched to identifying specific issues in the relationship. What boundaries of yours is being violated? Is it something that your spouse is doing that is inappropriate? Is it something that you are tired of? It is important to get to the specific issue. How is it affecting you and your love for your spouse? What is this? What is the sense of impact it is having on your life? These are important questions that you want to ask. Whether or not the problem is a pattern or an occasional event, is it something that comes up now and then, or is this recurring? Important to understand this. And these put you, Pastor Adams, in a better position to relate to the issue and to overcome it.
Yes, the specificity of whatever it is needs to be brought to the fore. But I thought about something just before we came on this morning, and I want to link that thought that I was making at our last broadcast to what we're going to say now. Because sometimes some people say, well, why do I need to go on with a spouse who may be not a boundary lover? I am discovering these shortcomings, and we dispelled that notion last week that not only the spouse may have a shortcoming, but you yourself as well may have a shortcoming. And that leads us to this very important point that we're going to make here first this morning. And I was referencing what Cloud and Thompson said, using the text in Ephesians, a very important text, because he's talking, the Bible is saying about building each other up in love. What I want to say, that the husband or the spouse or the wife, the person may have some shortcomings, some flaws, but you still love the person. Or we have to build each other up in love, right? And I guess that's the basis for marriage and family anyway. So I tie the principle, the concept, what we say when we use what is called the lens of the seeing the family through the Bible. If we put on family eyeglasses, and that's the way how Jesus loves us. Come now, let us reason. even though your shortcomings, the Bible refers to as sins, right, or faults, he still loves us, but he doesn't want us to stay with those faults. That's why the reason part is it. I'm not just gonna. I understand the flaws and the fault that you have, but I still love you. But let us have a conversation about that. Come now, let us reason, right? And the same principle applies. And you if you tie that concept over to the marriage, your spouse is not flawless, is not perfect, and therefore this reasoning in our presentation this morning is the confronting that we're talking about. And like I said, sometimes in our some previous broadcasts, when that first word was introduced, confrontation, not a bad word, we use it all the time in relationship, in conflict resolution, in the counseling room setting. You have to confront the client on a particular issue, a particular behavior, but it is how the confrontation is done that is what matters. It is not a confrontation that puts the person down and drag them in the mud or something. You are confronting a particular issue that must be addressed because you cannot sweep it under the rug. It is not making this relationship comfortable for me, neither for you. And so both of us are not comfortable because if the boundaries are continually violated, I am not happy, then obviously you will not be happy. And anyone who says they love their spouse, husband and wife, will want to know that that person is happy. If I'm doing something, that requires me to stop and think and make an adjustment and let's have a conversation, let's confront the issue. And when we are confronting the issue, it may well come out to the fore that I have to confront me about some of the things that I am doing, like we said in the last broadcast, because that confrontation may well point to my having to confront me on some of the issues that I have, whether I brought them from my family's origin past, whether it is hereditary or whatever, I may have to confront me.
Certainly, Pastor. And I want to add another very important dimension here as well, because the confrontation is important, but as you highlighted, it is done in a loving way. If a parent has a child, the child is doing something that the parent perceives to be destructive, the parent is going to address the issue. If you are in love with your spouse and you care for your spouse and you care for the relationship, then you have to confront. What I want to say, though, is in confronting, in pointing out a challenge with your spouse, it is important not to try to bring all the issues to the fore at one time. If you tell me 10 things are wrong with me, I may become overwhelmed, right? You're pointing out, I am lazy, I am this, I am noisy, I'm so and so on, and you keep going on and on and on. Then after a while, I may begin to think, well, I would never measure up, and it doesn't make any sense I try anymore. So we want to be careful in addressing issues to be, should I say, wise in what we deal with, when we deal with. Don't present a flood of issues at one time, because that could become overwhelming to your spouse. So be gracious, look for the most important matter and address that, and you are able to build on that later on to do some other things. Because, if you list a whole series of things, I want you to change this, I want you to change that, I want you to adjust that, I want you to do so, the person would become discouraged and may just conclude that this does not make sense anymore. So we ought to be wise
Yeah, the person might become overwhelmed indeed. And like we say in my local parlance, you don't bite off more than you can chew. You take this thing in manageable steps. It is not a criminal court or you're trying a case. Sometimes we say that somebody has violated the law and the lawmen throw the whole law book at them, mean that everything that dealing with you one time. No, this is not a trial, this is not a court situation. So you will take one issue at a time, and like you rightly said, prioritize them. Which is the most important? Which is the most problematic one? Let us go working on that. Let us spend our energy there. And maybe when we get that work through, the other ones may go away because that could well be the one. Because the main problem, if we discuss it, could well be the reason for the other, what we call presenting problems. Because I've seen that in a lot of situations. I've had couples say, well, put down what is the issue here. What the husband put down this, the wife put down that. So, well, this one is important to you. Let's start with this one. This one is important to you. This is start with. And when you deal with the main issue, you will find that all of the other ones that they listed below are actually linked to that main one. So you may have the main problem and then you have the presenting problems. Once you address the main problem, a lot of times those other presenting problems will go away. And so it is a wise counsel to put them down by order of importance. Which one is the most significant one? Why is this most significant issue? And when you start to go working on that, you will well find that the others just disappear.
And let's remember the principle that I shared last week as well. You want, well, we have shared on Marriage Encounter on numerous occasions that you want to be careful not to just point out weaknesses or faults without providing compliments. I think last week we addressed the issue
Yes.
of recognizing and acknowledging the good qualities in your spouse. You know, we say on Marriage Encounter that it takes 5 positives to cancel out the effects of 1 negative. And so in pointing out something that is a challenge, you may also want to soften it a little bit by indicating that, you know, you are indeed a nice person, you are this about you, that about you, etc. Because when you attack people, and especially if it's a character flaw, there tends to be some degree of resistance, and you don't want that to happen. So cushion it with some love. And sometimes when things aren't going as well as we would like them to, we tend to become forgetful of the positives, of the nice traits that our spouse brings to the table. And so the idea that we are suggesting here is that be mindful of the fact that your spouse has lots of positive qualities. Don't allow the 1 or 2 negative things to cause you to forget the bundle of joy that your spouse has brought to you over the years.
Right. That's so very, very important. That's so very, very important. But when we talk about the specifics, um, we must be able to articulate, and that is why the confronting part is so important. We must be able to articulate how this particular boundary violation is affecting the person, their feelings. Do they feel worthless? Do they feel devalued? Do they feel disrespected because of what is happening? So, let's look at an example. Somebody is late all the time, chronically late, and doesn't even seem to want to make the effort to correct that. How do you talk to that? How do you confront the person and have them understand how that is affecting you in a personal way? Because when we have the conversation, then we will know, right? So it is not just about the lateness, but how it is affecting several other things. So if you are late, it means that I have to maybe readjust my schedule, um, maybe postpone something or push it back. Maybe it is diminishing my worth as a professional person. I have to get to my appointment on time, and somehow this is diminishing, my professionalism, because there are certain things that goes along with one who's a professional. Your tardiness. Are you on time for your appointment, or getting to wherever you have to get? So it's not just the issue or the behavior, but how it is affecting the other person in terms of their whole self, their personhood. Do they do feel disrespected? Do I feel lesser than? Do I feel depreciated? Do I feel that maybe I am not a priority on your agenda? There's something else that is more important than I am. And as we say, you never give your spouse the occasion to think that any other thing is most important than him or her after God, right? You have to be mindful. as to how the person may interpret the behavior, as if they're not priority on your agenda. Therefore, you're not mindful about what the lateness will cause or how it will affect them.
Well, I think when we talk about confrontation, we're not just bringing the issue to fore. We want to be able to say to our partner, this has really gone too far. This cannot continue. I imagine you would have been addressing the issue before. You would have been expressing your concerns for the issue. There has to come a time when you say enough is enough. And again, we have addressed this before. If your spouse, now you're using the example of habitual lateness, and you correctly identified, Pastor, a lot of issues that could come out of an individual being habitually late. You know, the impact it has on your professional life, your reputation, how it pushes back other things and causes other people to disrupt their own schedules, etc. You have to get to the point where you say, listen, if you cannot do something about this, there are going to be some consequences. Confronting means addressing the issues head on. So you may say, listen, I enjoy having dinner with you every day, but if you are going to be habitually late, I'm going to have to deny you that privilege and eat at my scheduled time. And when you come, you prepare your own stuff. That's a part of confrontation. If it is a
Yes.
situation where your spouse is expressing or demonstrating, rather, some kind of addictive behavior, let's say to some substance or so, you have to say, if you cannot go and get the help right now, I may have to move out. If you can't check yourself into a rehab center and deal with this drinking problem, with this alcohol problem, or with this addiction issue, then this relationship is not going to be able to continue. Now, these are hard things to do and to address. But if we don't confront, change will not take place. And so sometimes you have to take this step. And what we are recommending, what we are suggesting is that you ought to be able to get to the point where you can say to your spouse, I've had enough. And it occurs to me that you are taking me for granted. You are not considering the concerns and expressions I've made in the past regarding this particular issue. Well, I want you to know that from this day forward, things are changing. Now, that's confrontation. And when you take a stand like that, you have to go through on it. You have to be able to say, that's it, that's it.
Yes, you when you take a firm decision, you have to take a firm decision, and it's more than that is involved, because if you're not confronting your spouse, if you're just going along and the person is not taking you because they think that you're not serious, you are actually acting the role of an enabler. I'm enabling you more in this behavior because I'm not confronting, I'm not giving you ultimatums and so, and even you mentioned substance abuse in it from the position of how the whole issue comes up with enabling this behavior and developing the whole issue of a codependency. So you have to confront and be resolute and be firm with your decision, because love does not say that you cannot be firm and take a stand and be resolute, right? Maybe that's what they refer to as tough love. I think so. Sometimes love has to take some positions, right? So that we can confront reality of what changes, what adjustments need to make. And we must always have to understand that the spouse who is confronting us, because they're doing it in a loving way, that person has our best interest at heart, because the person genuinely loves us. They just don't like the behavior or whatever is manifesting that needs to be changed, but the person loves you. And the same thing with how we relate to the God that loves us. He loves us with all of our flaws and all, but he doesn't love the behavior. I want you to change, to be converted, You see, so that's the same principle that operates here, and Paul, as Peter makes the point, right? You know, we have to confess our faults each to the other, one to the other, in a loving kind of way. And we expect that when I confess my faults, in a loving kind way, that you will be able to reciprocate in a loving kind way with the patience and with the understanding, because this is partnership. We are this together. And last week we talked about the growth experience, right? Um, you are growing in patience. You are growing in the way that you ought to grow in overcoming these areas. The person is growing on in terms of the way, the method that they will need to then how is it that develop that patience and that care and empathy and compassion and all of that. I am growing in that area. I am dealing with you to help you grow because I'm putting myself in your place. And I have to consider many factors, and we've discussed those before as to why. Because if we see a particular behavior, and particularly if it's persistent, then we also have to consider why, what is driving the behavior.
Certainly, certainly. And may I just add that when we deal with these matters of confrontation, we want to be sure that we're addressing the real issue. You're not just asking your spouse to make a behavior change. If there is a character flaw, then the spouse has to deal with the character issue. Because if my spouse is in the habit of not cleaning up, so that the house is always untidy, that may be a character issue. My spouse may just think that it doesn't matter, you live anyhow. And that may interfere, especially if you're from a particular background, that may really challenge you and interfere with your comfort level. And so, if your spouse says, okay, I'm going to satisfy you by cleaning up, today, tomorrow they may slip back into that thing. So you have to really address the real issue. What is the real issue? Am I asking for behavior change? Or am I asking for character change? And that is also very important. I think this is hard work, but it is work that is well worth it. I want to repeat something here that I want all of our listeners to pay attention to. We cannot take our marriages for granted. We can't just allow things to slide. We have to be intentional about the growth process. We have to invest in building meaningful relationship. And because you are marrying somebody who is different to you, you will have some conflicts. You will have some challenges. It is important to be able to see where these are and to negotiate a meaningful way of moving forward together. That calls for work. That calls for investment. You can't just get married and do no hard work and expect everything to work perfectly. It does not work like that. Meaningful, good, successful marriages require sacrifice, require constant discussion and growth. And a good thing to be able to do is to give attention to marriage building activities so that, you listen to Marriage Encounter. That's a good example. But you may also want to attend a marriage enrichment seminar. Every now and then you want to do a marriage checkup. How are things going? Don't take your spouse for granted. Even when your spouse says everything is okay, don't take that for granted. Invest in building your relationship. That is how you're going to grow and become a better spouse, become better couples by the grace of God.
Yes, yes. That that is so important. I don't know how much more time we have. If I could
We have
go
about 3
ahead
minutes.
and establish the other point, because as we said, it is a growth experience for both, yeah. And if and sometimes we have to understand what is involved. The example that you use there, Dr. Greene. Okay, if you're not coming on time, so I'm gonna go ahead and eat my dinner by myself, and when you come, you're gonna prepare your stuff. But it's more than eating the dinner. Because if I'm a spouse and I understand that my wife is putting in this time and this investment, and because she's making this dinner with me in mind, probably my favorite menu and all of that, she took the time and gather all of these things and is consistently doing this because it's not just eating together. What are the other benefits? What are the other blessings that accrue when you eat together, particularly if that's the only meal you're going to share together as a family? That's very important. So we have to consider all the other factors, not just showing up on time for the meal, but what about the other things? How does that build relationship, not just with maybe you and yourself, but the rest of the family? And the research did show that when the family eat at least one meal together around the table, it has quite a lot of benefits: social, emotional, academic, intellectual benefits if we have children in that setting. So it's not just the activity, it's not just the event that I am, not just this about coming around the table. Somebody had to put in the time and the effort, and they were doing all of this with you in mind and maybe with the family in mind. And a woman is going to be upset that I'm investing all this to prepare a meal that I want us to sit together and share, and you consistently not showing up. That's not take that easily.
And I think this is the point we're making. When we do not take care of our responsibilities, when we are not willing to respect boundaries and to listen to our spouses as they point out our faults and errors, it is the relationship that suffers. It's not just about, now, when you confront and you make a decision like that, you're doing it because if you don't, you are enforcing the negative behavior. But at the same time, your spouse must recognize that what happens is that the relationship itself suffers. And we like to say that if one wins and the other loses, the relationship loses. You are seeking, you should always be seeking to make your marriage a priority. We have to wrap it up now, but if you make your marriage a priority, you do not want to do anything that is going to result in the deterioration of your marriage. And that's
Yes.
the well, this is where we have to wrap up, Pastor. We continue the discussion next week. If you do have questions, comments, or concerns to our listeners, we invite you to send us a note. Let us know how meaningful the broadcast has been to you. Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. That is Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. That's all the time we have until next week.